TIFU by accidentally getting my dad arrested with pedophilia. Okay, so this isn't really TIFU because it didn't happen today. I hope this doesn't break the rules in that A, no pedophilia actually happened, and B, it all ended well. This happened over 20 years ago. I was around 10 maybe. Anyway, one day after work my dad comes home excited. He's just got hold of a camera flip phone, one of the first of its kind in the country. We were all excited. Little kiddie me begs my dad to let me play with it. I start playing the inbuilt color games and having a whale of a time. Then I start fiddling around with the camera. Being 10 years old, I thought it was absolutely hilarious to take pics of my willy, the terminology I used then, using the digital portable camera we now had. Next day, dad doesn't come home at work, mum's a bit concerned and his phone is switched off. At 8 p.m, police knock on our door and explain to my mum that child services were here and wanted to speak to me. I was utterly confused at this point. My mum as well. The police explained to my mother that they found child zucchini on my dad's phone and that my dad told them I had taken them without his knowing. This kind middle-aged woman started asking me in a separate room whether or not my dad had even done anything inappropriate with me or taken photos of me. I was like, no. The lady then explained that they found pictures of children's private parts on my dad's phone. At that point I just giggled and boasted about how it was me and expressed obvious feelings that it was somehow butternut hilarious. It became clear at this point that what my dad had said was true. The police leave and an hour later a police car drops my dad back off home. Dad is stern and tells me not to do it again and it was entirely inappropriate. Basically he went to work, bragging about his camera phone to his colleagues, took some photos, went through the album folder to show them, only to have my butternut pics there that everyone saw. RIP. Police immediately called. Thankfully police did have the courtesy to accompany my dad back to work the next day in the morning and explain what had happened and it was a mistake. A few apologies for the misunderstanding and it was all good. Anyway, got reminded this happened earlier when my mum called me asking if anyone in my family ever had encounters with the police. Lol. TL, doctor. 10-year-old me thought it was funny to take banana pics on my dad's phone. Colleagues of dad see them, assume he is a pedo, calls police. Dad gets arrested. Ends well as we manage to explain what happened. Oh my god. I hope this doesn't break the rules in that A, no pedophilia actually happened. This might be the only time that sentence has been said. You can get arrested for having underage pics of yourself. Instantly thinking of the Whitest Kids You Know song Get a New Daddy. Wait. TIFU by agreeing to go camping without realizing I was the designated carer for their first attempt at taking LSD. So this happened quite a few years ago when I was around 16-17 years old. My friends had planned to go camping in this really cool spot which is basically a hillside underneath an abandoned fort, facing a harbor. Unfortunately on the day I woke up really sick, and told my friends that I won't be making it. Went mental and started doing all they can to convince me, cause I was bringing one of the 2 tents etc. At first I did not budge, but then one friend's girlfriend texted me saying that they need to have a responsible guy with them and that you're the only one that's reliable. This seemed a bit weird but somehow inflated my 16-year-old ego and so I agreed to go. Even though I was still pretty unwell. Already dark as it was in November, I pack my bags and plan to go and meet my friends, when I receive a message from one of my friends asking me to bring scissors with me. I thought great. They'll set up the barbecue before I arrive and then open the packaging of the sausages/burgers and we can eat. And thought nothing of it. When I arrived at the hillside, my friends had already started smoking and the 4 of them were all pretty high already. I started setting up my tent next to theirs when one of them asked me for the scissors. I was like, cool, we're eating soon then? But why haven't you started a fire yet? And he goes, that's not why I asked you to get scissors, silly. And crouches down and start cutting LSD into halves. It is important to mention that I had never smoked, even cigarettes, nor taken drugs. So my reaction was, what the hell is going on here? They had planned to eat then have the LSD but then changed their mind as I ran a bit late. I tried to set up my tent while they were joking around, the area only lit up by a small lamp, the moonlight and the lights from the harbor. Suddenly everyone starts going berserk. One of my friends starts screaming that he can't feel his hands and that he's cold. Another one started doing the plank and throwing dirt on him trying to bury himself, while the third one started clawing at the bark of a tree saying that there is a man trapped inside. The fourth guy was laying down as he had crutches and was smoking a joint calmly. I started panicking and gave one of them a chocolate. Maybe the LSD was acting quickly cause they hadn't eaten or something. I literally had no idea how to deal with side effects of LSD and was just improvising, while I comforted the guy saying he couldn't feel his hands. Suddenly the guy trying to bury himself woke up and started running up the hill. Now we were camped underneath a fort, which had a 4 to 5 meters deep ditch around it, surrounded only by a wire at knee length. I quickly dropped everything and sprinted to stop the guy as there wasn't much lighting and he surely would have fallen. This kept on going for a while, although in a slower fashion, and in the meantime I managed to cook some food and they eventually got to their senses. I ended up sleeping in my tent by myself since I was sick and they hotboxed their tent. The following morning I woke up and went for a walk around when it suddenly started pouring. I ran back to my tent but suddenly realized that I had only set up half the poles the previous night. As we were camped on a hillside, water started accumulating on the upper side of the tent and it started rushing through the old seams of the tent door. I ended up trying to chuck water out like a captain on a sinking ship and got all my belongings soaked, while my friends were sleeping in their newer tent unfazed. Luckily my parents came to pick me up shortly after, but I was sick for days after and never really went camping near that fort again. TL, doctor, friends convinced me to go camping with them even though I was sick. Turns out I was the designated carer for their first attempt having LSD. Your friends are idiots, Lamau. What's the point of even having a trip sitter if the trip sitter doesn't know they're trip sitting? That's just a setup for a bar-arid time. Those are cheesecake friends. Bad trip for you. As others have said, you are not the foo here. A trip sitter is someone experienced with psychedelics who chooses to take responsibility for keeping everyone tethered to reality, however tenuously. Because you had no idea what was about to happen, you can't be expected to know how to contain it or reduce harm for them. This is a coconut thing for your friends to do to you, as it could have ended much worse. They offloaded their personal responsibility onto you without your consent. That is terrible trip. I'm so sorry. I hope they apologize for putting you through that cheesecake and think twice before doing it again. TIFU while describing my girlfriend's eyes to her. This actually just happened. I was spooning my girlfriend and talking about how much I loved her, but she joked about that being the only thing I dated her for. So I mentioned how I loved her eyes. Then she closed her eyes and told me to describe them. I said please don't make me do this, but she persisted. Started describing them as green, sort of a deeper, darker green, but I couldn't describe them beyond that. She encouraged me to continue describing them, but I admitted I couldn't. Keep in mind, this is the woman I expect I'll marry. The most amazing woman I have ever met. She finally turned around and opened her eyes. They are brown. My zucchini died inside. Fortunately, I have an amazing girlfriend and she's on top of me dancing and laughing maniacally right now. I think she's still in shock. If I don't update, I'm probably dead. BTW, we've been dating 3 months. TLDR, I told my girlfriend how much I loved her green eyes. They are brown. Lesson learned, you should always say you love their smile. It's universal. She will tease you about that even if you are still together in 20 years. You got a woman who can laugh at that kind of stuff. She may be a keeper. Most definitely a keeper. We already joked about what she'll say in her wedding speech, ha ha ha. At this point your only option is to claim you are colorblind and didn't tell her sooner because you thought she'd be ashamed of you. Lies are the bedrock of a stable marriage. Probably. Double down on that lie. My only recently discovering what green is, friend. You don't see it? I see a deep shade of green. Do not do this up or you will suffer the same fate as Potato Guy. This is the woman I plan to marry. We've been dating 3 months. I cringed, but I'm glad you're happy.